Tom Harrison had lived through more than most people could imagine. He'd survived war zones, dodged bullets, and faced more close calls than he cared to remember. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the sheer absurdity of opening his mailbox on a chilly Monday morning and pulling out a letter that hit him like a punch to the gut. He scanned the first few lines, blinked, and read them again, his mind struggling to process the words. The Homeowners Association had just informed him that his ranch, his 30 acres of hard-won peace, built with years of sweat and grit, had been reclassified as community land. It wasn't his anymore. As of right now, it belonged to the neighborhood. Tom exhaled slowly, the paper crumpling under his tightening grip. His ranch, where he'd spent the last 15 years raising livestock, repairing machinery, and savoring the quiet he'd fought so hard to earn, had apparently been turned into a public free-for-all without even a heads-up. His blood pounded in his ears as he skimmed the part about the HOA's plans. Walking trails, a dog park, and recreational areas were coming soon. There was even talk of a playground on his land. Slamming the mailbox shut, Tom marched to his truck, boots grinding into the gravel driveway. He wasn't the type to roll over for anyone, and he sure wasn't about to let some puffed-up HOA committee seize his property like they were lords doling out favors. He jumped in, threw the truck into gear, and peeled out toward the HOA office, hands clenched around the steering wheel like he was ready to strangle it. The HOA office sat smugly in the middle of the suburban sprawl that had crept closer to his ranch over the years. It was a bland, boxy building with perfectly trimmed shrubs and a sign proclaiming, "Community Office. Building a better tomorrow together." Tom shoved the door open and stormed inside. The receptionist barely glanced up from her screen before jerking her thumb toward a glass-walled office in the back. "She's expecting you," she muttered, as if Tom had been called in for a lecture instead of showing up to unleash hell. Margaret Klein, the HOA president, was a prim woman in her 50s with a starched blouse, a rigid spine, and a self-satisfied smirk that made Tom want to flip her desk right then and there. She looked up from a tidy stack of papers, adjusted her glasses, and flashed a smile that oozed fake sympathy. "Ah, Mr. Harrison, I figured you'd drop by eventually." Tom slapped the letter onto her desk. "What the hell is this?" Margaret folded her hands, unruffled. "It's a notice about the reclassification of your land. Perfectly legal. The neighborhood's development plan has been in motion for a while now, and your property falls within the community expansion zone." Tom barked out a laugh, though nothing about this was funny. "That's a fancy way of saying you're stealing my damn ranch." Margaret's smile tightened into something patronizing. "It's not theft, Mr. Harrison. It's community improvement. The residents want more green space, and your land is ideal." Tom leaned forward, planting both hands on her desk. "I'm not part of your damn HOA." She clicked her tongue and slid a folder toward him. "Actually, you are. When you bought your property, it fell under a larger real estate agreement from when this area was first developed." Tom didn't even glance at the folder. "I bought that land before your neighborhood even existed." Margaret shrugged. "Yes, but the original agreement included a clause." "I don't care about your clauses," Tom cut in. "That ranch is mine. I never signed up for your HOA." She sighed, like he was a toddler throwing a fit. "It's all there in the paperwork, Mr. Harrison. The amendment passed last month. You had a chance to object, but since you didn't attend the meeting." Tom's fist hit the desk, making her flinch. "I didn't attend because no one told me." She pursed her lips, shaking her head. "Not my fault if you don't check your mail." Tom's jaw clenched so tight, he thought his teeth might crack. He was tempted to flip her desk and storm out, but that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, he snatched the folder and left, slamming the door behind him before he said something that'd get him locked up. He drove straight to his lawyer, Bill Grayson, an old buddy who'd helped him sort out land issues before. Bill took one look at the letter and let out a long whistle. "Tom, this is bad." Tom dropped into the chair across from Bill's desk. "Tell me something I don't know." Bill skimmed the papers, frowning. "They've dug up some old clause from your original land deal. Since you never filed an exemption when the neighborhood grew, they've got a legal foothold to claim community rights over your land under new zoning rules." Tom stared at him. "So they can just take my ranch?" Bill hesitated, then nodded. "Not take outright, but they can enforce community use. You can fight it, but it'll take time and cash." Tom rubbed his face, leaning back. Unbelievable. This is my land, Bill. I know, Bill said with a sigh. I'll fight it, but it won't be quick. You need a plan B if the legal route fails. Tom went quiet, a hard glint flickering in his eyes. You're right. I do need a backup plan. Bill's face creased with worry. Tom, what's cooking in that head of yours? A slow, predatory grin spread across Tom's face. If they want my land, they're going to have to earn it. I'll make them wish they'd never tried. Bill groaned. I don't like that look. What are you planning? Tom stood, already plotting. A little home defense. Let's see how they like their community space when it's got fences, guard animals, and a few surprises. Bill rubbed his temples. Just don't land yourself in jail. Tom chuckled as he headed out. No promises. For the next 3 days, Tom worked nonstop, fueled by fury and the kind of stubbornness that had kept him alive through 2 overseas tours. He'd dealt with bureaucratic garbage before, but this was personal. They weren't just inconveniencing him. They wanted to take what was his. That wasn't happening. He started with the fences. The old wooden ones kept the cattle in, but they wouldn't stop nosy suburbanites who thought they owned the place. So he put up an electric fence. Nothing lethal, just enough to zap anyone dumb enough to touch it. A little sting to make them think twice. Then he called in reinforcements. 2 massive, mean-tempered bulls, delivered by week's end. He named them Storm and Blaze. They weren't just for show. Let the HOA try building their park with 2,000 pounds of horns charging around. He added security cameras along the perimeter, too, so if the HOA pulled anything shady, he'd have proof. And just to cover his bases, he posted signs everywhere. Private property, no trespassing, and enter at your own risk. Owner not liable for injuries. It didn't take long for the HOA to strike. Tom was checking the herd when he heard yelling near the front gate. There stood Margaret Klein, arms crossed, leading a pack of HOA cronies in khakis and overpriced shades. 2 guys held bolt cutters, ready to slice through his fence. Tom leaned against the gate, casual as could be. Afternoon, folks. Need something? Margaret skipped the niceties. This fence is illegal. You can't block community land. Tom smirked. Funny, that's exactly what I'm doing. She waved at the men. Cut it down. The first guy stepped up and touched the fence. A loud crack split the air, followed by a yelp as he flopped backward into the dirt, arms flailing. His buddy froze, horrified, while the guy twitched on the ground. Tom bit back a laugh. Oops. Forgot to mention it's electrified. Margaret's face went scarlet. You can't do this. You're obstructing community access. Nope, Tom said. I'm protecting my private property. Big difference. She huffed. This isn't over. You'll regret this. Tom watched her stomp off, dragging her stunned minion. He knew they'd be back. He'd be ready. Over the next few days, the HOA tried everything. They sent landscapers to clear his land, but Tom had dug manure pits in strategic spots. The first guy drove right into one, sliding knee-deep in cow muck in a hilarious wipeout that had Tom doubled over laughing. Then came the joggers. HOA folks acting like his ranch was already their park. That ended fast when Storm and Blaze chased them off, grown adults sprinting for their lives across the field. It was the best show Tom had seen in years. Then there was the night raid. Tom's cameras pinged after dinner, catching 3 HOA members, including Margaret, sneaking onto his land, cutting his fence, and planting stakes for their project. Flashlight and shotgun in hand, more for show than use, Tom strolled out. You lost. Margaret jumped, nearly tripping. We have the right to survey this land. It's community property. Tom grinned. Funny, my cameras say otherwise. Pretty sure the sheriff will love this footage. One guy muttered about leaving, but Margaret doubled down. You're just making this harder for yourself. The HOA won't back down. Tom tilted his head. Ever seen a bull charge at night? Her eyes narrowed. What? He whistled sharply. Hooves thundered in the distance, a dark shape barreling through the field. Run, Tom suggested. They did. Next morning, Tom posted the video online. It went viral in hours, people nationwide roasting the HOA's entitlement and rooting for him. Local news dubbed it the Great HOA Standoff. But Tom knew the fight wasn't over. They'd come back with lawyers and dirty tricks. Fine by him. He wasn't backing down either. He was sipping coffee on his porch when they rolled up, black SUVs like a military convoy. Margaret stepped out, flanked by 3 slick lawyers and a sour-faced sheriff. They were done messing around. Now it was legal warfare. Tom leaned on the railing, sipping slowly as they approached. Margaret looked smug, expecting him to crack. He just let the silence linger. She cleared her throat. "Mr. Harrison, I assume you know why we're here. To apologize for trespassing?" Tom quipped. A thin lawyer with a flashy watch stepped forward. "We're filing an injunction against your illegal barriers and obstruction of community development. You're violating zoning codes, and we'll have your fences, livestock, and deterrents removed." Tom nodded, mock thoughtful. "So I've got to ditch the fences keeping my cattle safe, get rid of my bulls, and let strangers tromp around my land?" Margaret smiled triumphantly. "Exactly." Tom grinned. "Not happening." A heavier lawyer sighed. "This is your last chance to comply before we take this to court. You're facing serious consequences." Tom sipped his coffee. "Here's the thing. I figured you'd pull this, so I did some homework." He grabbed a thick folder from the porch table and tossed it at the lawyer, who fumbled to catch it. Margaret snatched it, her face draining as she read. "My lawyer, Bill, found a clause in my deed, older than your HOA, that exempts my land from community zoning," Tom said. "Plus, I filed trespassing charges against you for every time your goons set foot here. That judge's ruling there says your plans are dead in the water." Margaret sputtered. "This is absurd. You can't override the HOA." Tom leaned closer. "You poked the wrong guy, Margaret. You thought you could bully me out of my land, but you didn't check your facts. Now you're not just losing, you're in deep legal trouble." The heavy lawyer tugged his tie, sweating. "Let's not rush into anything. Maybe a compromise." Tom laughed. "After you tried to steal my ranch and trash my fences?" "Nope." He pulled out his phone, playing footage of Margaret's night raid. Cutting fences, planting signs, tripping face first into the dirt. Caught it all. The sheriff whistled. "That's a bad look." He pulled out handcuffs. "Margaret Klein, you're under arrest for trespassing and property damage." She gaped as he cuffed her. "This is a mistake. It's his fault." Tom sipped his coffee as she was led away. "See you at the next HOA meeting, Margaret." The lawyers blustered empty threats before retreating to their SUVs. The final showdown was over in minutes, leaving Tom victorious on his porch. In the weeks that followed, the HOA imploded. Leaderless and under fire, they faced lawsuits from other homeowners they'd bullied. Margaret's scandal, fueled by Tom's viral video, made her a laughingstock. Online, people hailed Tom as a hero against HOA tyranny. A month later, Tom bought the defunct HOA office with help from Bill and some investors. In a perfect twist, he turned it into a petting zoo for local kids. Standing by the fence, watching families enjoy his ranch, Storm and Blaze grazing peacefully in the distance, Tom knew his land was safe. The fight was done. And the HOA? They'd finally learned some folks aren't worth messing with.